Hi, welcome to the 3rd of October 2020 episode of The Part-Time Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kapil Amarasinghe, aka at TheGreatestDoc on Twitter and Joe Sky on Reddit. Now, it's been quite some time since I've done one of these, and I'll be up front, I've been really busy. I've been working hard in the hospital. As some of you know, I'm an emergency medicine doctor. Plus, I've had some postgraduate exams that have been consuming an awful lot of my time. Now, that's not just it. I have been keeping an eye on the crypto scene, but I'll be upfront, from my mind as a regular guy, as an end user, it's not been that interesting. DeFi, that's kind of been the big word that's been going around the current hype cycle. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of DeFi. I'm a great believer in what it can achieve, and I think it's wonderful, and I think it really serves as a showcase of the future of fintech. But the simple truth is, right now, I'm not a believer that it can sustain a narrative run for a further speculative bull case in cryptocurrency in general, And I think some people are going to disagree with that. And I think some people are, just going to be like, what? But I'm just going to make my case here, which is that if you want a crypto project to succeed long term, if you want it to have real use case, non-speculative value, if you want it to experience organic growth in user base, if you want it to be more than just a simple pump and dump, I've always believed that you should be able to explain it to an average person, and they should be able to get it within 5 minutes, really a minute. So let me try and explain DeFi. Let me try and do the narrative in my head around your average DeFi project. And I'm going to give you an alternative comparison for something that I think is much better afterwards. But let's start with DeFi. Okay, so here's your average guy on the street, and here's me having a conversation with them. Picture this, I'm just interrupting them, I'm holding some flyer, I'm spinning some rando card around. But let's say I stop them and say, hey, you over there, how would you like to take your money that's in your savings account, and how do you like to do some stuff that would make sure you get 10% per annum interest rate on it? And that guy I'm talking to, they may stop and go, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Like, I'm only making 0.5% a year, savings, leaving my money locked up in this account. How do I get a 10% per annum return? So then I say to them, you need to sign up to any of these websites, eToro, Coinbase, Bittrex, Poloniex, Bitfair, you name any kind of currency exchange service. You pick one of these sites, sign up to them, send your money to them. Once it's there, convert it into Ethereum or into Bitcoin. And once that's done, maybe you want to learn how to use a currency exchange to get hold of this DeFi token, or maybe you need to go to Uniswap and learn to do that. And then once you've learned to use Uniswap, you can get this token and then link it to this smart contract, and then do this, and then do this. And then before you even finish talking, they'll just go, shut up. I'm not interested. This is too complicated for me. It's too much for me. There's too much risk involved. I don't really know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're getting at, and because I don't understand you, I can't trust you, and I don't have the time to do any of this stuff. And me on my end trying to explain it, I'll just look and go, yeah, I get it. You don't have time to learn this stuff. You've got too many other things to prioritize in your life right now. And also the existing structures work for you. They're there. They've been there for years. They're established. You don't really have to think about them. You just rely on them. Even if they go down, that there's a ton of regulations that will help protect you if something happens to them, and that governments are backing them at the same time. So if something does happen to the institution that holds your savings, there's a good chance that they'll be safe anyway, because the government will intervene. There's a whole regulatory, social and historical framework behind existing centralized finance. That means it's a no-brainer for most retail end users. And this is the problem. I don't think DeFi is going to take off for the retail market anytime soon, because the infrastructure is not in place, the accessibility is not in place, the education is not in place. So at the end of the day, there's not much there for people at the retail end to get involved in. And it's great, DeFi, if you look at it, I remember in 2019 when I did the Remtech show, not even most people knew what MakerDAO was. Most people barely understood how Bitcoin worked. And that's your average fintech, worker. Most fintech people don't understand how DeFi works. So you can't make a narrative case to retail buyers, potential retail buyers in crypto, that DeFi projects are the way to go. I just don't think it will work. I mean, it worked fine for Bitcoin, digital gold. I think that was probably understandable enough. You buy 500 Bitcoin, it'll become worth this much. I mean, yeah. You can pull off a speculative Ponzi only so many times before people get jaded. I honestly wonder how many people who lost money in the last sort of Bitcoin bull run, and that's mainly retail buyers, I'm going to add, will probably have been put off permanently from any kind of speculative buy into Bitcoin. Yeah, most of them are confident that it will come up. The ones who didn't sell at a loss, or the ones that didn't take profit, I'm sure most of them are confident that it will bounce back. But I just don't think DeFi is going to provide that narrative anytime soon, or I'll be very surprised if it does. And that leads me on to my next point, which is, what do I think is the narrative that could justifiably sustain a genuine bull run in crypto? I want to go back to the origins of cryptocurrency, and I want to stress the second word in that: currency. We've come to associate cryptocurrency and distributed ledger tech with being speculative instruments, and now our mindset is shifting towards them being financial instruments. But actually, Bitcoin was conceived of first and foremost as an alternative currency for the buying and selling of goods and services. Unfortunately, 11 years on, longer actually, 12 years on, that reality just hasn't come to pass for most average people. Now, yeah, you'll get a handful of people listening to this that'll go, but I can use my Bitcoin here. And that, yeah, I guess you can. But for most people, that's just not practical. And it's too much work. And this is a problem, because I think the next big retail wave of crypto will come, the next big wave of retail growth in crypto will come not through speculative investment into cryptocurrency, not through a greater fool's theory, not through any of those mechanisms. I think it will come through non-speculative use as a retail asset, as an actual currency for buying and selling real world goods. So this is why I'm still interested in projects that do e-commerce with crypto, such as Particle, such as the Origin protocol, and such as OpenBazaar. And it's unfortunate, to see what's happening with OpenBazaar, that it's not doing too well. And I think that reflects some of its limitations of, being first out the gate, and possibly trying to build a service before the required infrastructure was available. They were one of the first decentralized e-commerce peer-to-peer platforms, but they were never really that user-friendly. They were always relatively obscure. Yeah, they got funding, but in my mind, they never made the best case. There were too many steps to using OpenBazaar, which was, again, you'd have to download OpenBazaar, then you'd have to set up your own currency exchange account, then you have to send fiat to a currency exchange, then you'd have to send that to get Bitcoin, then you'd have to send the Bitcoin, you have to download OpenBazaar, wait for it to sync, and then browse through their relatively limited selection of markets to find something that you might want, and then you'd have to send your Bitcoin, which would then go into an escrow that was moderated by a third party, wait for the escrow to be clear, and wait for the goods to be sent. It were just too many. It was adding work to a system that doesn't need work being added to it. If you look at Amazon, if you look at traditional e-commerce platforms, they're fairly straightforward. You go to the website, you provide your personal information, which creates your own account. Then once you've got your account, you just link it up to your credit card, which is already pretty much set, because credit card infrastructure, debit card infrastructure, that's, as I've said earlier, that's already well established. And then you just browse and buy, sell goods online. It's easy, it's relatively convenient. It's more convenient than physically walking to a shop and getting that stuff that you'd be looking for from that shop. It's just easier to find it online, order it, and then wait for next day delivery. And that's actually why the high street's dying, because Amazon and eBay and Etsy and a lot of the other big e-commerce providers have created a layer of convenience that didn't exist with traditional high street shopping. And that's why the high street's dying. You can't compete with that level of convenience. And they've used that level of convenience to also effectively undercut from a cost perspective and to improve the experience from a customer service point of view and a customer satisfaction point of view. I think it's really hard for the high street to beat what Amazon or other big e-commerce providers are doing. And that really takes me to my point. OpenBazaar wasn't giving any value on top of Amazon from a convenience perspective. If anything, it was making it harder. And that's why I don't think DeFi actually is a very good narrative case for a bull run in cryptocurrency, because setting up a DeFi service right now is harder. It's harder to get your head around and requires more work than setting up a bank account with an existing high street banker and lender. And I think that's the key thing to keep in mind, is that convenience is a really important factor in all of this. That said, why am I so bullish about e-commerce as being the next big driver for cryptocurrency? Well, I look at a service like Particle and go, okay, here's a client which you can just download. It's peer-to-peer. It integrates a blockchain, its own blockchain, into an e-commerce client, and is really privacy-centric. So this is basically an e-commerce tool, a protocol that allows you to buy and sell goods online without providing any personal information, without creating any logins, without having to undergo any sign-ups, that has no third parties that are doing data analytics on whatever you're buying or selling, that has no third parties involved in its escrow mechanic. So when you do a transaction with someone, it's just you and them on that network, and no one else can really see what's going on. And I think that's really powerful, because if you look from a convenience point of view, okay, you download a client, which is a bit like Spotify, and then you sync it, create your wallet. All right, that's a bit like setting up your debit card, but then that's it. It's synced. You can see the listings that are there. You can see what you want to buy. If you want to sell things, you can do it on the same platform because it's open. It can be done anywhere in the world. So there's that level of convenience. You've gotten rid of the logins and you've gotten rid of the sign-ups. It's a single setup. So there you've already created a level of convenience, but you've given the function of privacy, because you're getting rid of the third parties. As I said, the escrow mechanic that exists in the Particle network is no human third party. Basically, if you want to buy something or a seller wants to sell something, you have an escrow box that works using a smart contract, and the buyer puts a deposit into that escrow box that's equal to twice the value of the item being sold, and the seller puts money into that escrow box that's equal to the value of the item being sold. Then the seller sends the goods across to the buyer, and if they receive it and everyone agrees the sale was successful, the seller will get the amount of the goods and their deposit back, and then the buyer will get their deposit back, and the money that the value of the goods that they paid for the item will go to the seller, and the buyer will get their goods as well. So everyone wins. Whereas if for some reason the sale doesn't happen and resolution can't be met, both the buyer and the seller lose their deposit. So in that scenario, if someone is trying to purely scam the buyer, if the seller is trying to scam the buyer and no resolution is invoked, then the seller's net profit will be zero. Whereas if the buyer is trying to scam the seller, okay, the seller won't get any profit, but the buyer will have paid twice the value of the item. So there's actually a really good mutually assured incentive in place to make sure both parties are nice to each other. And I really don't want to tinker with that too much. I think it's an elegant way of doing e-commerce without having a human third party, without having to give up any names or dates of births or personal addresses. Just give a shipping address, put your money in the escrow, it's done. So why am I saying this? Because that's not all. I think that's also part of the equation. So you've satisfied privacy. You've created an open network for e-commerce that anyone can be a buyer, anyone can be a seller, all the transactions are private, there's no third party in the escrow. And then the other step that I think is probably the most important step is then that there's no commissions on this platform. So unlike with other e-commerce platforms like Amazon or eBay or Etsy, You sign up, then you're giving up your personal information, you're trusting it won't get hacked and then spread everywhere so that identity fraud can be committed on you. You're trusting that the information you give won't be used by these companies to perform third-party analytics, where as a seller you may then get outcompeted. Hush hush Amazon, potentially. The other thing is, when you use the traditional e-commerce services, as a seller you're paying up to potentially 40% commission on sales. And that's huge. That's a huge chunk of profit margin. Whereas if I said, hey, here's a platform which is free to use, doesn't require personal information, is completely private, and has no commission, then if I was the seller, I'd be like, there's no commissions. What's the catch? And I say, look, this is just how it works. It uses digital currencies. And yeah, I know you've still got to get your head around using a digital currency, but at the same time you've given digital currencies a point to exist, because up to now it's like, well, all right, there's Bitcoin. Is it accepted by Amazon? Is it accepted by Etsy? Is it accepted by eBay? Is it accepted by the local corner shop where you live? The answers are no, probably not. Whereas this is just a platform which by default, do you accept Monero? Yeah. Do you accept DAI? Yeah. Do you accept USDT? Yeah. Do you accept USDC? Yeah. Do you accept Zcoin? Yeah. Do you accept the Bitcoin? Yeah. Do you accept, Particle as an e-commerce platform can be configured to accept potentially any cryptocurrency as a medium of settlement. Yeah, if you look at the mechanics, all the actual settlement gets done in the native part token, which plays into the privacy aspects and helps secure the smart contract aspects, and that's all the technical stuff. But at the end of the day, the current v3 version of Particle is going to accept and streamline the process of accepting so many other cryptocurrencies for use on its e-commerce platform. So you've got this scalable platform that adds several layers of convenience and is potentially cheaper to buy goods from. Potentially if you get rid of commissions, sellers, instead of paying a 40% commission, they could just, charge 20% less for their goods. So the buyers are paying 20% less, but then the sellers are earning 20% more in that scenario. I think that's kind of a no-brainer to me. Sell the same goods that you would on other e-commerce services, but sell them for less while making more, and also don't have to worry about a centralized company with trillions basically undercutting you, releasing the same products you are by analyzing your sales patterns, and then releasing the same goods but cheaper, or stealing your innovation. As a vendor, these are huge benefits, and as a buyer, just simply not having to do a sign up or a login, or just knowing that no one's really watching over your shoulder what you're buying or selling, I think that's great. If you're a privacy enthusiast, that's your use case. And this goes to my end point, which is if you're looking for the next crypto bull run as a speculator, it's not going to come from speculation, it's going to come from real world retail use. And that's just going to be people using a product or service like Particle every day the same way they would as Amazon. But the difference between Particle is that ledger of transactions, by integrating the e-commerce functionality and the currency functionality and the escrow functionality and all the smart contract stuff and the currency exchange facilities into the same platform, all of the incentives for Particle to basically be a liquidity magnet for other cryptocurrencies and for fiat are kind of there. Everything's kind of in place. So that's why when V3 comes out, I hope you guys use it. I hope you guys promote it. I hope you guys give feedback for it. And I hope we get some real boots in the ground movement, because ultimately usage of this platform is going to be beneficial to all of cryptocurrency. The more active buying and selling of goods we get on the Particle marketplace, the higher the daily trading volume on the part token will be, but also the higher the daily trading volume on any of the other cryptocurrencies that the Particle network supports will be. Because, I don't want to go into the details again, but because of our integrations of SimpleSwap and StealthX, which are basically integration of swap bot currency services into our core desktop client, for me, it's really simple. Send your Zcoin because you're looking to buy something. You're generating a bit of, in the background. If you're using the SimpleSwap or StealthX bot for Zcoin, you're basically creating a bit of daily volume between the Zcoin to BTC conversion, and then you get the BTC to part conversion. That's volume for both trading pairs. In any scenario, flow, which is liquidity at its core, is good. And I think that's healthy. Imagine the speculative market is so much smaller in my mind than the retail market. The retail market globally is so much bigger than the speculative market in cryptocurrency currently is, way bigger. And I think the real drivers of e-commerce in cryptocurrency are going to be the big winners and the big leaders in the next cryptocurrency bull run. It's not going to be DeFi, and it won't be that for a few years. I think it's going to be e-commerce, because I think e-commerce is something that people understand, that people relate to, that people use every day, that people use without thinking about. And I think there's a real need right now for an improvement in our existing e-commerce systems. And I think the decentralized commerce, deCommerce solutions that are afforded by Particle and Origin Protocol and a few others, I think they're basically the future, and I think they're the really imminent upcoming future in our next cryptocurrency revolution, in our next phase of growth. I think DeFi is a phase. I think it will play out bigger in the next few years, but I think the growth in DeFi is going to predominantly be led by fintech, and I suspect they'll build retail solutions over the coming years that will utilize existing DeFi concepts. But I'm much more confident that we'll see more rapid growth in the e-commerce sector within cryptocurrency, within the deCommerce sector of cryptocurrency. Anyway, that's my talk for the day. I hope you found it interesting and useful. If you have, share it around, and feel free to subscribe to my channels and listen out for more. Okay, have a really good day, guys, and look after yourselves. I will speak to you soon.